So I figure we should probably start. I kind of did a list just based on recruiting rankings, based off the 2021 class and how each team did. So we can kind of go in that order. So unfortunately, that means that we're probably going to be starting with the worst team as recruiting wise, which would be Purdue.
Yeah,
my friend.
Yep.
So they are ranked 75th nationally, which is rough. You have on the 24/7 recruiting composite website, you have to click load more to get to their number, which is usually an indication that it's a down year.
A down year is an understatement.
Yeah.
I think I took a brief look and it was like Vanderbilt's higher and like all these.
I made a list. I made a list of
all
teams
right.
that are higher than Purdue. We've got Rutgers, Cincinnati, Memphis, SMU, Central Florida, San Diego State University, Wake Forest, Toledo, UTSA. Rough time to be a Purdue fan.
Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts on Purdue right now, obviously. Conflicting. I don't know how to feel right now, honestly, because I think I mentioned on this podcast before that I was in favor of firing Brown. I've softened on that since then, as we've gotten further away from the 2020 season. Basically because it's a hell of a lot better than it was under Hazel.
It's fair.
I don't know. I looked over the history of the last 20 years, even with Joe Tiller, the legendary Joe Tiller. And Purdue football has really never been great. And I think this day and age where you see everybody wants to be Alabama, everybody wants to be Clemson, but it's just not realistic as a Purdue fan. And you need to realize sometimes that's just our place in this world right now. And maybe we're never going to be a football team that's Ohio State or even Indiana right now. but this is probably more a Purdue fan that's just in denial right now.
So I personally, I think there's no reason that Purdue couldn't compete for a Big Ten West title.
See, that's the only upside. The Big Ten West is the worst, probably.
It's weak. And so here's the thing about the Big Ten West. All the schools are relatively small in comparison to the East. The student population is just generally smaller. Their endowments are generally smaller. So you get generally less money, right? But Purdue just finished building a new football facility, and it's fantastic. That's going to be a great recruiting tool that, teams like SMU, like UCF, like San Diego State, that you're competing with them for recruits, they're not going to have that. Even looking at like Cincinnati doesn't have that nice of a facility. So, and those are the kind of recruits that you're competing for is that level of recruit. So I think when you look at that, that's going to help some in recruiting. I think that they made some really good stadium upgrades. Installing the lights was a good thing for the stadium. And honestly, the stadium itself is a very nice stadium. It's older.
I love
it. But it's a very nice stadium. When it's packed, it looks. I mean, it's one of the toughest places to play. So, I actually think that Purdue is better than their rankings. I think that obviously being in Indiana, you have to compete with Notre Dame, you have to compete with Indiana, but then you also have to compete with Ohio State, Northwestern, a lot of other schools that are trying to pick schools out of it or players out of Indiana.
Yeah.
So they're in a tough spot. But there's no reason that here in the next couple of years, they couldn't be competing for a Big Ten West title. And I honestly think that's what the goal for Purdue should be.
I think it should be, but I think we've taken a step back these past 2 years. I think part of the reason I was so quick to be like, all right, Brom needs to be fired is one, there was a couple coaching decisions toward the end of this past season that I was not okay with. We had two of the best receivers in the entire country that just were not used as two of the best receivers in the country, and David Bell and Rondale Moore. I remember one game specifically. I can't tell you exactly who they were playing, but it was the second half, and Rondale Moore and David Bell touched the ball like 3 times combined in the second half. And so there's some play call issues I have with Jeff Brom. But I think the main problem that I had was it started off so well. Like,
yeah, and then
we were 7. Yeah, and it's fallen off pretty precipitously. And it's pretty much because of the quarterback play. We had David Blau for 2 seasons, who was really, really good. Like, going back and looking at some of his statistics, I think we kind of underrated David Blau a little bit. But they went 7-6, and then they went 6-7 his first 2 years. They made bowl games both years. Had a win over Ohio State that is probably gonna suffice for me for the next 5-10 years. I could probably just live off of that win.
Yeah.
But we wasted Rondale Moore. I understand he was hurt and opted out and then opted back in. But he's going to the draft now, and he was one of the best wide receivers in the country, and we really only got 1 full season out of him.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think that providing there's no real turmoil at Purdue, there's a good chance that Brom turns this around. I do think that he is a pretty good developer of players, more so than, needing to recruit these guys that are 5 stars out of the gate. I think he develops players well, and maybe it is right. Maybe he needs to find the right play calling, people on his assistants that can help him with play calling, and maybe that's what it is. Maybe he'll figure it out. I'm hoping
he needs to find a defensive coordinator.
Yeah. So that's really all I have for Purdue. I think that, obviously they are 14th in the Big Ten, so there's nowhere to go but up for recruiting.
Yeah.
I don't think they finished last in the standings.
No, they were tied with Illinois for wins. They both had 2 wins, but Illinois played 2 more games and lost. So Illinois was 2-6, Purdue was 2-4. So
okay. Yeah, well, you don't play games, you don't lose them.
Yeah, I guess so. We definitely would have lost the 2 games. I think they were canceled because it was the Indiana game was canceled.
Ooh,
and I think it was I can't remember.
It doesn't matter.
No, we would have lost it anyways. No, it was a Wisconsin game. It was Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah.
It was Wisconsin.
That's rough. Rough guy.